major in Asian studies, back way before it was cool to study Chinese. In fact, there was far more people studying the Russian language than Chinese. So I learned to speak and read and write the language, the culture, the history, everything, actually pretty much everything about the Chinese people. And then I went to live with them and work with them. And so I got a pretty good insight, not just China, but Hong Kong, Chinese people in general, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Chinese of Southeast Asia. But I have a lot of experience in China in particular. And the reason I say there's other countries is because the Chinese ethnic groups of those countries, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, almost all business is run by ethnic Chinese. But we're not interested in that. We're interested in China in particular, because that's the country that's obviously the most dominant one that everyone's talking about. So I have a lot of experience in business in general, but I did a lot of manufacturing in China. I had a company that was a contract manufacturing company based in the U.S. So I would take orders and make the thing or the part or the whatever, the assembly that the U.S. manufacturer wanted. And so I did a lot of negotiating. And so what I want to concentrate on today is a particular experience I had negotiating a very, very large long-term supplier contract. And that was for a company called Black & Decker. And Black & Decker was the largest kind of a home do-it-yourself market, power tools, door locks, faucets, those kind of things. Home Depot, Lowe's, if you're familiar with the U.S. at all, was very dominated by Black & Decker products. About 20 years ago, they were bought by Stanley Works. So they've been subsumed into another company. But anyway, so Black & Decker was not doing much in China until I came along. In fact, they had a lot of plants down in Mexicali in Mexico, as well as across the U.S. So China was a big thing and a new thing for them. And this long-term supplier contract was with a Chinese factory, and it was to supply the worldwide sales of door locks in particular. And so this long-term contract was every year something had to happen, the following year and another year. So it was quite complicated. It dealt with volumes and quality and what happens if the quality returned, what happens then. And there was just every aspect about the business relationship. And so of course I spent a lot of time at the factory dealing with the owner, because that's who we were dealing with directly, is the owner. And that's normal in China. You don't really, unless you're talking about like a Huawei or something, you're not going to spend much time talking to lower level people, especially if you're an important customer, of course Black & Decker was. You're going to mostly be speaking with the owner of the company, or the CEO. And that's important because in other cultures like Japan and other Asian countries, you almost never get to see the owner. But that's a different subject. So I'm just going to say right up front, first off, the Chinese people in general like to negotiate. You buy a pair of shoes in the market, you're going to negotiate about that, unless you want to pay whatever they say. But they don't expect you to pay whatever you say. You have to go through a bit of a negotiation. And now we're talking about shoes or bags or whatever you see in the market, and you got to kind of know what they cost. You got to kind of know what you're the value of what you're buying. And if you were to say, say these shoes should be about $10, $12 if you figure, or euros, depending where you are. I'm in Portugal, by the way, as well. I'm in Estoril, just outside Lisbon. So the shop owner is going to say 20. Well, I'm not going to say 10 or 12 because that's the price that it should be. So I'm going to say like 6. I'm going to say 6. Well, that's ridiculous too. But the shop owner gave me a ridiculous number. So now we got to work from there down to the real one. So, okay, well, oh, no, 6 is way too low. Okay, how about 18? And then I'll come up a little bit and I'll say, well, I don't know. These things aren't worth more than 7. So we go back and forth, and finally, she'll say 14, and I'll say 9, and I might have to walk away. I might have to walk away. I'll walk away for about 3 seconds. Oh, come on, come back, come back, come back. So there's a ritual to it, and finally we'll get it down to 10 or 12, and that's generally. And of course, if you go into a supermarket or you go into a mall, you're not going to be able to negotiate like that. But if you go to a night market or any of those other small shops that are owned by operated by the owner, that's expected. The only time in the U.S., for example, where I come from originally, you negotiate something like that. So when you buy a car or you buy a house, but generally we don't negotiate much. I'm going to tell you a little side story, if you don't mind, about negotiating. I was down in Maputo, in Mozambique, and I was there with a group of Portuguese. And this African on the street, they sell a lot of things on the street, and he was selling shirts, nice African shirts. And he comes up to me and he gives me a price. I said, okay, that's nice, give me a price. And I said, that's more expensive than Lisbon. And so I start negotiating with him like I would in China. And the first thing he says to me is, oh, you have to buy a shirt, you have to help me. So he was doing the shame thing. He's working that angle on me. But I'm sorry. I mean, I can be ashamed of a lot of things, but I'm not ashamed of what happened in Mozambique. Okay. So I said that doesn't work on me. Sorry. But I'll tell you what, why don't you help me help you? You come down with the price. Okay, I'll buy it. But he wouldn't do it. And so we kind of went nowhere on that. Another example, when I was in another market, and I love this, was the best line I ever heard. He says to me, gives me expensive price again for a shirt. And I said, that's ridiculous. And he says to me, and I loved it. I actually bought it from him for this reason alone. He says to me, a big man pays big prices. I guess I'm a big man, then I'll buy, whatever. So that just gives you a little bit of a flavor of what I'm talking about here. The Chinese are very much negotiating, people. So that kind of gives you the background on what in business, of course, talking about the stakes are much higher. By the way, if I'm speaking too fast, let me know. I'll have to ratchet it down a bit.
No, it's
okay?
fine. It's fine. I think it's fine.
Okay. So as I mentioned with the buying the shoes, you gotta. I'll tell you some principles about negotiating in general, and then I'll talk about in China in particular. And this is true for any time you negotiate in business. You have to know the facts of what you're dealing with. I mean, the thing, okay? For example, a door lock, okay? How much is a door lock worth? How much is it worth? I don't mean in Home Depot. I mean, how much does that thing cost to make? Okay, well, you have the brass in it, okay? And then you have the zinc. And then you have the assembly of it. And how much time does it take to assemble on a production line? Okay, how much is that labor worth? And so you break it down, the door lock, you break it down to the material cost of all the components, the labor cost and time to make that door lock. And then you got to work in the cost of running the factory, okay, power, water, the fixed cost of the factory, and you kind of break that down so if the factory produces 10 million, door locks in a year, and it costs them 100,000 for the electricity. Well, you can do the math on that pretty easily. And so you make a list of all these things, and then you got to work in the profit margin for the owner, obviously. Now, in the U.S., this is very important. You got to know these things. You have to know these things. If you're going to be a serious businessman or woman dealing with anyone, actually, in a negotiating situation, you have to know these things. because that's the only way you know if you're getting a good deal or not. Because obviously the manufacturer clearly knows what they cost. Now he wants as high profit margin as you're willing to give him, but you have to give him what's fair for that market. I'll give you an example. In the U.S., a manufacturing company for your basic day-to-day goods is going to work on about a 25% profit margin. Okay, anything less than that, they're going to probably walk away from. China, 5%. They'll get down to 2, 3, or 2, 1, even down to 1%, just to get the business, because cash flow is actually very important to them. So even if they're making 1% profit margin, as long as they get the cash flow, it's worth it to them. Okay, so I know that. I know 5%. So I'm not going to add 25% as they do in the U.S. So I know they add 5% because that's what they expect. That's what they live with. So you put all those numbers together, and then you come up with a unit cost to make that thing. Obviously, if you're responsible for the logistics of it, that's something you have to add on your end. But if they're shipping CIF, for example, which means that they're paying for the logistics to your port, okay, then you got to figure out how much it costs to ship a container and how many door locks can you fit in that 20-foot container, those kind of things. So in other words, you got to do your homework. No, I'm not an industrial engineer. I'm not an engineer of any kind, okay? But I know industrial engineering and I know mechanical engineering because I've worked with these two areas for, well, you can see how old I am by my Santa Claus beard here. So a lot of years. So that's the thing, because if you walk into a situation where you're negotiating, whatever it is you're negotiating, it doesn't, and even if it's not a thing, it's a service or it's a high-tech app or something. It's the same principles. You have to know how much it costs for the coding person, how much it costs for him, how many hours that take. What's this, and the distribution, and the downloading, and how it's marketed. All those kind of, all the your spreadsheet is going to be the same, except the headings, the items are going to be different names. Principles the same thing. In consulting, how many consultants do I need, and how many hours of them do I need, and how much do I have to pay them, and expenses, I got to calculate that in there, and et cetera. So whatever service or thing, but that's the point of it. If you don't know those things, you cannot, just put it this way, you will not walk away with the best deal that you could get. Now, if you're happy overpaying because you can sell that thing for much more than you're buying it, well, fine. It's whatever you're willing to accept. But I'm talking about best practices here. This is best practice. So I knew all those things when I walked in there. I knew everything. I knew the price of zinc, futures price was saying, not the price today, but the futures price on the London, exchange, metals exchange for 3 years from now. Yeah, I knew how much it would be in 3 years. So that's what I had when I walked in there. Now, did I know that the first time I walked in? No, I didn't know that. But I knew the product. Why? Because I spent a lot of time with Black & Decker, dealing with their engineers and their their quality control people, and what's important, and this has to be this way, otherwise it'll break that or whatever. And then, so I said, oh, well, brass. Okay, they get their brass from Australia and China. Okay, well, what's the price of Australian brass? So you got to get as much detail as you can get. And that's, in other words, be prepared. And that's what I mean by be prepared. When you walk in there, when you do the actual negotiating, I spent a lot of time on that factory floor before we negotiated that agreement. So I could see how long it took, how many people it took on that line, and et cetera, for the labor part of it. And you just take notes. You say, oh, okay, that's interesting. It took that person 12 seconds to do that operation, and that person 3 seconds. And I'm talking about one door lock here, right? Packaging, that's important. All those things. So then, so that's the thing. So when I walked in there, and it took a long time. It takes a long time to negotiate these things, and this is where it gets more Chinese than just general. Now, the Chinese, as I said, expect negotiating on price, but they don't expect you to know as well as they do the cost. Now, of course, we'll never know exactly like they know it, but they don't expect you to have done your homework. So already, right out of the gate, you're already ahead of it. So now they got to kind of like, oh wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about. He's an expert, and of course they respect you for that. They respect people who get the good price. You know, they might hem and haw and all that, but at the end of the day, they say, oh, this is a professional. He's like me. You know, I'm a professional at what I do, or he is too. Um, but it takes longer in China than it would in the U.S., for example, or Europe, just because there's an element that goes beyond the um, the actual data in the agreement, the prices and whatnot, and that is on the personal side. Can they trust you in a business relationship? Okay, yeah, they know the name Black and Decker, but they've never done business with Black and Decker. They've heard about it, but they don't know what kind of people they are, that represent that company. And so they're going to want to spend some time with you. And that time is going to be dinners. It's going to be dinners and after dinners. And you're going to say, well, yeah, okay, that's nice. Well, it's not nice when you do it night in, night out for weeks at a time. It takes a toll. And what I'm talking about here is big dinners, lots of food, lots of alcohol. And then after that, then you go to the KTV, which is the karaoke. KTV is a private room with a TV in it. And I don't know if you're familiar with the karaoke is. It used to be the big thing that you would sing along to the video. All right. So I could choose a song, that they have on their menu, and we'd all sing. If we all knew the song, we'd all sing it. And more alcohol. So about 2, 3 in the morning, well, 2 in the morning at least. Then you finally go back to your hotel room and get up again the next morning at 7 or 6, depending on how far away you are. And you're going to, people, you say, oh, yeah, I've heard that before. No, that's a fact about doing business in Asia, period. And in China in particular. And if you're not prepared when you walk into there and you say, oh, no, I don't drink. Well, see, that they don't accept that. They say, well, wait a minute. You don't, how can somebody not drink? That's not possible. And you explain to them, I'm sorry, it's a health issue. Oh, yeah, right. And so it is a bit of an issue here. If you don't like to drink alcohol, bring someone on your team who does, because I'm telling you that's important. It's important actually, and also, I wouldn't. You normally don't negotiate by yourself. You have a team of your own. You might bring your industrial engineer with you. You might bring your packaging engineer with you, your quality, manager with you. You bring your experts with you. And if you have 3 or 4 or 5 of you, there might be 1 or 2 that can hold their own, and that's fine. That's fine. That's the thing. Now I'm going to talk to you specifically about the Chinese people in business. Okay, and if you're representing a Western company, the Americas or Europe, I know a lot of companies in North America and Europe especially like to think, oh, we're going to do business in China. Well, we better hire a Chinese person or a Chinese American person or something like that. That's the worst mistake you can do. Never, never, never do that. And even if you are a Chinese person, an ethnic person, and you are the CEO of the company, I would still send I hate to say it, a white person. And I hate to say it, but that's a fact. They're racist. It's a fact. They're racist. They will look down upon an Asian person. They will look down upon a Chinese person. Wait a minute, I'm doing business with a U.S. company. Why am I talking to a Chinese person? That's exactly what they're going to think. No, I want to talk to the real person. I want to talk to the real person, the real decision maker, not this Chinese person. Okay? If you're a Chinese company, obviously you're going to have Chinese. But if you're an American company, a European company, and you send a Chinese person to represent you, it's a big mistake. And I see companies do that all the time. Because the Western thinking is, oh, well, they're going to understand each other better. or they're going to, relate to each other better. Well, that's total ignorance about how the Chinese people actually think. Okay, so that's a fact. The other thing is being from a much more traditional society than Western Europe or North America. I see a lot of women here, and that's great. It's a great thing. It's a little dicey when you're doing business in Asia as a woman, okay? Because they still have the attitude that it's a man's world. And I'm gonna tell you, it's my advice is if you have to go there and negotiate, that's fine, but you should bring a man or two with you. And that sounds sexist, but that's who we're dealing with here. They are racist and they are sexist, okay? And I can't change that, and you can't change that. Only time and education and dealing with the outside world will change that, and that'll take time. And by the way, I love the people. I love the Chinese people. Okay, they're different in a lot of ways culturally, true, but I get upset personally when I hear in Europe, in North America, racist things about Chinese. Oh, the damn Chinese are taking over everything. Oh, they're gonna, and I can say, you know what, people, calm down. It's not the Chinese people, okay? It's a few rich people coming over here and buying some of our company. Why not? That's smart business to do that. So that's a bit of an issue that we in the West have to deal with. So because the Chinese, it's a man's world, by the way. When you get upper management in manufacturing companies or actually any large company, you're going to be mostly dealing with men, and especially the decision makers. They're going to be men, and they're not going to know how to deal with you as a woman. They're not going to, I mean, as an equal. Yeah, they can deal with you as a woman, as a person, but as an equal, they're going to have some troubles with that. And so you got to help them through that by being, if you are the lead on the team, fine. But but just bring a man or two with you, for show. The packaging engineer or whatever he is, just to help things along. Let's see, what else can I say? Oh yeah, drinking alcohol. Okay, now I have a lot of experience with this, and this is a subject you might relate to or not. But if you have to drink with the Chinese, remember a couple of things. First off, most important thing about drinking alcohol is your body's tolerance of alcohol. Okay.
What, sorry?
What I mean by that, what's that?
I didn't, your body's what?
Tolerance. The tolerance for drinking alcohol. So what I mean by that is, if you're going to China, if you have to go to China regularly, then you have to prepare yourself. And I'm talking about like two glasses of wine a day. 1 glass of wine a day. Every day have a glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine, okay? Which is better than having no wine for 3 weeks and then suddenly drink, 2 bottles. Well, you will fall on your face. But if you drink a glass or 2 every day for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then you have to drink, a bottle or 2 of wine, well, you're going to do much better, okay? Don't drink on an empty stomach, obviously. You got to pace yourself. The Chinese will try to make you drunk. That's the whole purpose, is to try to make you drunk. And because in their minds, they are being a good host. By making you drunk, they're actually doing a good thing for you by showing that they're a good host. Okay. The worst thing you can do as a Chinese host is say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have more wine. No more wine tonight. Or you've had enough." Or, "Oh God, that'd be the worst thing." So to make you drunk is not a bad. They're not being mean. They think that's a good thing. So you just got to kind of play along with that. So you got to pace yourself. You don't have to drink the whole. Take a sip. Hey, well, come on, no, I got to drink all with all you guys. So I'm going to just take a little bit. So control. You can control that. And then when you finally get home, or get to your hotel room, make sure you take your Tylenol or ibuprofen before you go to sleep, not after you wake up. Before you go to sleep is much more effective. Stay awake for an hour. Watch something on Netflix on your laptop or something. Try to stay awake for an hour, you'll find much better the next day. There's a couple of tips. And the worst thing is if you have to go visit many factories or many companies in 2 weeks time, you got to meet 10 of them. Well, it's going to be, first of all, you have big breakfast, we got big breakfasts because you're going to have a buffet at the hotel. Then you're going to have a big lunch. And then you're going to have a long, big dinner with a KTV afterwards. And remember something, that for them, this is a special occasion because they don't eat like this every day. They only eat like this when they're with you, with visitors, foreign visitors especially. For them, it's a big deal. And you're going to think, man, it's all about, no, it's all about you. Yes, it is about you by being a good host. But when you see 15, 20 Chinese people, managers, all kinds of, department heads are all there at the table, people you've never seen before and people you'll have no dealings with. Well, for them, it's a big deal because, they can't eat like that every day. What else can I say? Yeah, so basically be prepared in all the details. Just kind of roll with having a drink and eat with them for many, many hours after work. That's really important for them to get to understand what kind of person you are. You have too much to drink, you start fighting and getting angry, which some people do. I drink too much, I get jolly. I tell silly jokes and things, and they like that. Oh, this guy's he gets funny when he drinks. Oh, that's a good thing. Right, and they're trying to understand, what kind of person you are. How do you react to situations like that? And so that's why they're doing it.
Brilliant. Brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant. And also great time management, Thomas. Congratulations. Listen, before I just get going, who would like to ask questions so that we can manage our time? Michelle wants, Evelyn. Who else? Salma? Michelle, Evelyn, Salma, and Julian, right? Okay, let me see. Just before we get on, very.
Yeah, Noko, Alfredo. We have Noko.
Sorry?
What's this?
Noko as well. Sorry, Noko is there. Okay.
And
So
Evelyn,
I will not ask any questions, only if there is some time left.
All right.
So Evelyn, shall we start with you?
Hello, thank you for coming to speak with us today. I think you had a lot of interesting stories and a valuable experience, so it was great hearing that. I just have a question. I know you said that as a woman doing business with the Chinese, your advice to bring them in, and I definitely understand that with the cultural differences. But do you have any advice on top of that, especially maybe going throughout those trust-building dinners and drinking nights on, maybe you've had female colleagues with you in those situations, and maybe a bit further on advice on how to deal with them?
Yeah, actually, and I'm going to tell you, I didn't tell you about this part of it, but when you go to the KTV and you're in that room and you're drinking and singing, there's always going to be a young woman sitting next to you, okay? And she's going to pour the drinks, and she's going to see, what big arms you have, and, basically make a man feel good. The kind of things a woman can say to make a man feel good, especially a very shallow man, which many of them are. And I've had engineers, U.S. engineers with me on these trips, some of these trips, and obviously they don't have a young woman sitting next to them, but at least they understand that this is how things are there. And now there's no sex involved. I'm not saying, there's not having group sex there. They're just pouring drinks. They play dice games, drinking games. They sing along, and they basically just make things a little merrier. That's all. So a woman just has to be a part of that. Well, she has to be part of that. Sorry. Especially if you're any kind of decision maker. If you're really important to be on that team, you have to be there. You can't excuse yourself and let the underlings have the fun. So I just have to say, and that's true all over Asia, so not just China. Now, I will say this. In Taiwan, for example, who are ethnic Chinese, it was very common to have women running factories, women running companies. So in Taiwan, you're going to have a lot easier go at it being a woman, but in China, that's still a rare thing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, your turn.
Hello,
Michelle?
sir.
Good.
Mhm.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, sir. Thanks for sharing your experience with us. I do have a question in regards to negotiations. You mentioned that there's a lot of back and forth that happens with the companies you deal with or the manufacturers you deal with. Now, I assume once an agreement is reached, there's a contract in place. Do you find that they stick to what's on contracts, or do they change your mind? And if they change your mind, how do you go about renegotiating?
Okay, this is my feeling about contracts. Okay, contract is something you must negotiate, every detail written down, it's signed and everything, lawyers, everything. Once that's done, you stick it in a drawer and you never see it again. Okay, because if the other side starts cheating on you, then you don't have a business relationship. Okay, you do business as a relationship, two parties that have a mutual interest. And as soon as one is not following the rules, if you start suing them or you start doing this or doing that to them, then you no longer have a business relationship. Now you have an adversarial relationship. All right. So that's really the fact of the thing. But like for example, you would say like every year for the next 3 years, you must lower your sales price by 5%. Well, why is that? Because you get better at what you're doing. You get more efficient the longer you do something, and that more efficiency and productivity translates in lower cost. Okay, well that's true. So if the next year comes, the price goes down 5%. Now the Chinese factory could say, well, no, I think, well then you have provisions for what if the costs raw materials go up by 10%, for example. What does that do to the sales price? Or what if it goes down by 10%? What if the exchange rate changes? You have all that in the contract. Exchange rate goes up 10%. Well, guess what? That the cost of everything as far as in US dollars goes up 10%. And of course, that's just being fair. And you have to be fair. You can't expect to take advantage of them. Oh, well, the exchange rate, we didn't get that in the contract, so they're going to have to be stuck with that lower exchange rate. Well, that's not fair. They were talking about relationship here. So I hope does that answer your question?
Good.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I now want to welcome Salma, who comes from Morocco and joined us today. Thank you very much,
Hello,
Salma.
everyone.
And
Thanks to you.
I think there is also another of our students that has some experience in Morocco. Who is it? Is it Sarah? Yes. Okay.
Really?
Please, coach Salma on it as well. I'm sure you have lots of things to exchange about. Now, Salma,
Yeah.
your question to Thomas, please.
Yes. Well, thank you, sir, for all the information you've given. But my question is a kind of obvious. Why precisely China? Why did you choose China and not any other country? Thank you.
You mean for this talk today? We're going to have to ask Alfredo about that because Alfredo asked me specifically to talk about China.
Yes, Salma, Salma is a newcomer, so she doesn't know that I try to join the speakers on a particular topic, region or industry, so that we may profit from that. So Salma, it's China because he was asked to speak about China and other Asian countries. Okay?
Yeah.
I could speak about any other Asian country because I've experienced it.
No. So this is just because Salma has just arrived.
I thought that his emphasis was only China. I thought that his emphasis was only China. That's why I asked.
Rather than other Asian countries?
Yes.
Okay.
Why? Yeah.
Okay.
So
perhaps Thomas, you can add, why would it be that there are so many Chinese ethnic nationals in Asia to do business with?
Well, that's what I was going to say to Salma. Okay. When I started my talk, I mentioned that I've done business in all Asian countries, almost all, not North Korea, obviously, but and the Chinese ethnic people control 80-90% of the businesses, private businesses of countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines. Okay, so what I just said to you about China, it pretty much applies to doing business in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, obviously Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, those countries, because the Chinese control, and I don't mean Chinese from China. I'm talking about Chinese that 300 years ago immigrated to Thailand or Malaysia, and so they're Malaysians and they're Thais, but they are ethnically Chinese, and they're the ones that control the business.
Okay, good. Let me say now Noko and then Julian.
Hello, thank you for talking to us today and sharing us your experience. So I was interested in the fact that not only in China, but also in Japan, that it's kind of rude to decline a drink from your business partner and who you're negotiating with. And I agree with your statement. And I was wondering why and how like people negotiate with each other while getting drunk, because you'll forget how, yeah. And it's crazy because my father also does this too. So I was just wondering how everyone just does it so well. And
well, I'm going to tell you, Noko, right there, I'm going to tell you, no one negotiates when they're drinking. No one negotiates over the dinner table. Negotiations are done in the office, and then you go out and you don't talk about it until the next day. In fact, it's considered very rude to talk about business over dinner or over drinks or whatever. That's the time when they get to know each other. That's the time you talk about your kids or your cat or your, the things that you like to do outside of work or, whatever. Those just to get to know each other. But no one negotiates that over drinks and things. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. Julian, you're next.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for the honest and direct experience. I'm coming from 2 years in China, and I had to negotiate some contracts while I was there, though nothing like yours. It was for teaching. But I noticed something, and I was wondering if you could give me some advice or some insight. With the Chinese people, I think it's appropriate to say you have to gain trust, and then you make a contract. And I had gained trust with the company after 1 year, and I had made a contract, and then some words were exchanged too while we made the contract. And usually, in my experience, the words that were exchanged, basically my question is, do Chinese people ever keep their word if it's not directly in the contract? Because I had agreed to some things that I didn't put in the contract. And I know in America, you need to always put everything in the contract. But I thought in this sort of culture, you can have some agreements that are from friend to friend, not in the contract, and that they will abide to that. What is your take on that?
I would say that's probably not the case. If it's not in the contract, there's a reason for it. And though they may say something to you, that's, oh, don't worry about that, but we have an understanding. But okay, if we have an understanding, why isn't it in the contract? And, so that's my first question. My first answer to you is the fact that they wouldn't put it in the contract means something in itself. If you're personal friends or family, well, you probably wouldn't have a contract at all. Now you're dealing on the personal relationship. And I don't mean friends for a year or 2 years. I'm talking about classmates, university classmates, or, family, blood ties, that kind of thing. Of course, they wouldn't have a contract. But they're dealing with a foreigner and a teacher, okay? Teachers are very high in the Chinese cultural world, but foreign teachers have become a bit of a commodity now. And they're generally short term. They come over for a year or two. So I would probably say in that case, no, I would definitely say if it's not in the contract, there's a reason for it.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for your stories about IGO and long nights.
Sorry, Julian.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Are there any more students that want to ask a question? Yes, Clark.
So my dad worked for Reader's Digest. He was vice president of custom solutions for like a decade. in the 90s, and he said it wasn't uncommon. I mean, I think it's alien now, being 24 in the United States in the current climate. They would take clients out to strip clubs and go partying with them. And it was very, very common in the United States to do that before like 2005. So do you see, like, was there any shift in like Chinese business customs towards the end, or did it kind of stay consistent, like socially? Because now if you took clients to a strip club, you'd probably be fired in the United States.
Yeah. No, in China, no, it hasn't changed. I tell you what has changed radically is Xi Jinping. About let's see, what year was that? He came to power, 2014. Yeah, 2013. I think he came to power. Yeah, about 7 years now, and he immediately ended the corruption of the officials. Okay, not private business, but it used to be. And I was, at that time, I was a president of a U.S. manufacturing company, and I was based in China, at the factory there. And the local officials would always show up to visit you about 10 minutes before 12. You know, they just happened to stop by. Well, obviously, you have to take them out to lunch. I'm talking about 2 hours, you know, whatever, an expensive lunch, just to say hello. You know, he put a stop to all that. There used to be really nice, expensive restaurants that you could never get a seat in because they were full of officials being entertained by various people in their jurisdiction. So that has changed. Driving expensive cars, if you're a local official driving expensive cars, that's frowned upon by the party. But fortunately, most foreigners coming to China to negotiate something with the company will have very little dealings with the local officials. I had a lot of dealings with local officials because I was running a factory in China, so I had to deal with all that. But as far as private factories go, private companies, nah, that hasn't changed.
Thank you.
Okay, just a very short question, Thomas. If building relationships is so important, what happens when you need to change people? Say, change an American because he's retired or left the company, you send another one. What happens then?
Well, the same thing, except you're not starting from zero. They already have a trust in your company because they're doing business with you. So you come along, you say, and you introduce this new person. By the way, this person will be your future contact and your future, you know, whatever. And so when they go out for dinner that night, they're going to probably spend, more attention on what kind of person this is. And so, yes, this person will have to establish a rapport. The Chinese, with each other, but it's not starting from zero. Otherwise, that's
okay. But it would require that the person that is leaving the American company actually be the one that introduces the newcomer?
Yeah, that would be ideal. Absolutely ideal.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, Thomas, I know that you had a hard finish because you're busy and you have to take other commitments. But on behalf of the students and the University of Salamanca, I want to thank you very much for your very useful and knowledgeable input on practical affairs and negotiations in China, particularly, and in other ethnic Chinese countries. Thank you very, very much, Thomas, and I hope to continue to work with you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Now,
Bye.
Students, we come back in 10 minutes. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.